On the morning of March 17, 2025, Iran launched a coordinated drone and ballistic missile strike against Israel's Haifa oil refinery complex. The facility processes over 250,000 barrels per day. It supplies fuel to the entire northern region. Initial reports claimed minimal damage. Israeli officials refused to confirm casualty numbers. But satellite imagery reviewed by independent analysts tells a different story. At least 3 storage tanks were hit directly. Fire suppression systems were overwhelmed within minutes. And here is what they are not telling you. This was not a symbolic strike. This was industrial sabotage timed to coincide with refinery maintenance windows when fuel reserves were at their lowest seasonal point in 3 years. Most people think this was retaliation for a single airstrike. In reality, this is the 4th documented Iranian counterstrike in the past 11 days, targeting Israel's energy infrastructure. And the timing is no accident. In the next couple of minutes, I will show you what really happened, why Israel's response to the South Pars gas facility triggered this exact chain of events, and why both governments are actively suppressing the full scope of what is now burning on both sides of this border. Quick, before we continue, thanks a lot for tuning in. Your support is what keeps this show going, and I appreciate you watching. Please make sure you are subscribed and like the video so more people get to see this. Now let us get to it. This did not begin at Haifa. This began 72 hours earlier at South Pars. On March 14th, Israeli F-35I stealth fighters struck Iran's South Pars gas field in the Persian Gulf. The field is the largest natural gas reserve in the world. It accounts for nearly 40% of Iran's total gas production. The strike targeted compression stations and offshore processing platforms. Iran's oil ministry initially denied any damage occurred. But shipping manifests reviewed by Reuters showed that gas exports to Turkey dropped by 18% within 48 hours. European spot prices spiked by 11% the same week. Israel claimed the strike was in response to Iranian-backed militia attacks on Israeli positions near the Syrian border. Iran claimed the strike was an act of economic warfare designed to cripple its ability to finance proxy groups in Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen. Both claims are partially true, and both miss the larger pattern. You need to understand this. Over the past 6 months, Israel has conducted at least 9 covert operations targeting Iranian energy infrastructure. Most were never publicly acknowledged. Most never made international headlines. But the cumulative effect has been devastating. Iran's oil export capacity has been reduced by an estimated 22% since October 2024. Sanctions enforcement has tightened. Shipping insurance costs have tripled. And every time Iran rebuilds, Israel strikes again. South Pars was supposed to be untouchable. It sits in contested waters. Striking it risked pulling in regional navies, but Israel did it anyway. And Iran's response was not symbolic. It was calculated. The Haifa Refinery strike used a combination of Shahed 136 loitering munitions and Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missiles. The drones were launched from positions inside southern Lebanon. The missiles were launched from western Syria. Total flight time was under 12 minutes. Israel's Iron Dome intercepted 4 of the 6 missiles. It failed to stop 2. Both struck within the refinery perimeter. One hit a crude distillation unit. The other penetrated a tank farm storing refined diesel. Fire erupted immediately. Black smoke was visible from satellite imagery captured by Planet Labs at 0643 local time. Israeli emergency services sealed off Highway 4 and evacuated a 2-kilometer radius. The fire burned for 6 hours before being brought under control. During that time, fuel supply to military bases in the north was rerouted through secondary pipelines operating at reduced capacity. This created a logistics bottleneck. Armored units scheduled for exercises near the Lebanese border were delayed by 9 hours. And here is the part that matters. This was not the only target that morning. At the exact same time the Haifa strike occurred, Iranian-linked groups launched coordinated attacks on 3 other Israeli energy sites. A power substation outside Hadera was hit by mortar fire. A fuel depot near Netanya reported drone surveillance activity. And an offshore gas platform in the Tamar field detected what Israeli naval intelligence described as possible sabotage attempts by underwater drones. None of these incidents were confirmed publicly. Israeli media was asked not to report specifics under military censorship guidelines. But the pattern is undeniable. Iran was not hitting one refinery. Iran was testing Israel's ability to defend multiple energy targets simultaneously, and Israel's defenses were spread too thin. The Shahed 136 is a delta-wing loitering munition with a range of over 2,000 kilometers. It carries a warhead of approximately 50 kilograms. It flies low and slow, making it difficult for radar systems optimized for high-speed ballistic threats. The Fateh 110 is a solid-fuel ballistic missile with a range of 300 kilometers and a warhead weighing between 400 and 650 kilograms, depending on the variant. It uses an inertial guidance system with terminal phase maneuvering capability. Iron Dome was designed to intercept short-range rockets and artillery shells. It was not optimized for the combined saturation tactics Iran deployed at Haifa. By launching drones and missiles in overlapping waves, Iran forced Israeli air defenses to prioritize targets. Drones were treated as lower threat. Missiles were engaged first. But the drones arrived on target while interceptors were still being reloaded. This is called layered saturation. It is a doctrine Iran has been refining for years in Yemen, Syria, and Iraq, and it worked. Now consider what this means for future escalation. If Iran can successfully strike a hardened refinery complex inside Israel using weapons launched from proxy-controlled territory, then no Israeli energy facility is safe. Not the oil terminals at Ashkelon, not the gas platforms offshore, not the power plants in the south. Israel's energy infrastructure is now a verified target set, and Iran has just demonstrated it has the capability to reach it. This is not the first time energy infrastructure has been weaponized in the Middle East. In 2019, Iran-backed Houthi forces struck Saudi Arabia's Abqaiq oil processing facility using similar drone swarms. The attack knocked out half of Saudi Arabia's oil production overnight. Global oil prices spiked by 15%. Insurance premiums for Gulf energy assets doubled. Saudi Arabia rebuilt. But the vulnerability was exposed. The same logic applies here. In 1973, Arab oil producers used an embargo as a weapon during the Yom Kippur War. Prices quadrupled. Western economies staggered. The message was clear. Energy is leverage. In 1991, Saddam Hussein set Kuwait's oil fields on fire during the Gulf War. Over 600 wells burned for months. The environmental and economic damage was catastrophic. In 2006, Hezbollah struck Israeli infrastructure during the Lebanon War, targeting fuel depots and power stations to degrade military logistics. Every conflict in this region eventually targets energy, because energy is not just economic, it is operational. Without fuel, militaries cannot move. Without electricity, command systems fail. Without gas, populations freeze or revolt. Iran knows this. Israel knows this. And both sides are now targeting each other's industrial lifelines with precision that would have been unthinkable 2 decades ago. Here's what happened in the hours after the Haifa strike. Residents within the evacuation zone were given less than 10 minutes to leave their homes. Families with young children scrambled into cars with whatever they could carry. One father interviewed by Haaretz described his daughter asking if the fire would reach their street. He did not have an answer. Emergency rooms in Haifa received 16 patients suffering from smoke inhalation. 3 were children under the age of 12. None of this was shown on Israeli television. None of this was discussed in official statements. The government line remained the same. Minimal damage, situation under control. But the people who lived through it know otherwise. And on the Iranian side, families in the South Pars region are dealing with their own nightmare. After the Israeli strike, gas supplies to local towns were cut off. Heating systems failed in the middle of a cold snap. Hospitals reported a surge in respiratory infections among elderly patients who could not keep their homes warm. One clinic director told Al Jazeera that 3 patients died from complications linked to cold exposure in the 72 hours following the strike. Iran's government did not acknowledge these deaths. Israel's government did not acknowledge the strike caused them. But the people burying their family members do not need official confirmation. This is what energy warfare looks like when it lands on civilians, and both sides are doing it to each other. Now zoom out. This is not just an Israeli-Iranian problem anymore. Turkey imports 38% of its natural gas from Iran. If South Pars production drops further, Turkey will be forced to seek alternative suppliers. That means increased pressure on Azerbaijani pipelines, Russian exports, or LNG shipments from Qatar. Europe is watching this closely. Any disruption in Eastern Mediterranean gas flows affects European energy security. Israel's offshore gas fields supply Egypt and Jordan. If those fields come under sustained attack, both countries lose critical revenue and energy supply. Jordan's economy is already fragile. Egypt is managing inflation above 30%. Neither can afford an energy crisis. Then there is the insurance industry. Underwriters are already recalculating risk premiums for energy facilities in conflict zones. If attacks on refineries and gas platforms become normalized, insurance costs will skyrocket. That cost gets passed to consumers. Oil prices rise, gas prices rise, inflation accelerates globally, and the cycle feeds itself. Meanwhile, Iran is signaling to its regional allies that coordinated infrastructure strikes are now an approved tactic. Hezbollah is watching. The Houthis are watching. Militias in Iraq are watching. If this model proves effective, expect copycat operations across the region, targeting ports, targeting airports, targeting power grids. The rules of engagement are shifting in real time, and no one is prepared for what comes next. So where does this leave us? Israel and Iran are now locked in a shadow war that neither side can publicly acknowledge, but neither side can afford to lose. Every strike demands a counterstrike. Every counterstrike demands escalation. And both governments are betting they can control the spiral. But the evidence suggests otherwise. Civilians are paying the price on both sides. Energy markets are destabilizing. Regional actors are being pulled into the conflict whether they want to be or not. And the international community is either unwilling or unable to intervene. Most people think this is about retaliation. In reality, this is about infrastructure degradation as a war strategy. It is slow, it is deniable, and it is devastatingly effective. Because you do not need to invade a country if you can make it unable to function. You do not need to occupy territory if you can cripple the systems that keep that territory alive. This is 21st century warfare, and it is happening right now. The question is not whether this will escalate further. The question is how far both sides are willing to go before something breaks that cannot be repaired. And that answer is not clear. Not yet. Thanks a lot for watching. I really appreciate your support. Join the discussion in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think energy infrastructure should be considered off limits in modern warfare? Or is everything fair game now? And how do you see this escalation cycle ending? Let me know. Please subscribe and like the video if you want to stay updated. And click the video on the screen to see another. I will see you soon.